Bye. On my channel, I share some of the most disturbing and unexplained crimes that have ever occurred. But this particular case is different, because what I'm about to tell you didn't happen in some dark alley. It didn't happen in a place you'd expect violence. It happened inside a family home, a place where children are supposed to feel safe. This is the story of the Derby family massacre. The Derby family lived in a neighborhood just like yours. The kind of street where people wave to each other in the morning, where kids ride bikes on the sidewalk, where nothing bad is supposed to happen. Neighbors would see them regularly, taking out the trash on collection day, washing the car on weekends, the father heading to work every morning, the mother coming home with groceries. Everything looked perfectly normal. But investigators have a saying in cases like this: the most dangerous situations are often the quietest ones, because what people show the world is rarely the full story. And behind the Derby family's front door, something dark was growing. According to official case documents, the family had been struggling for months. Financial pressure was mounting with each passing week. Bills were stacking up on the kitchen counter. Credit card statements showed maxed out limits. The bank had sent multiple warning letters about the mortgage, but they never told anyone about their problems. Not friends, not extended family, not even their closest neighbors. And this silence would prove to be fatal. People who knew them later told police they noticed changes. Small things at first. The family stopped showing up to neighborhood gatherings. They made excuses to avoid birthday parties and cookouts. Phone conversations became shorter and more distant. One neighbor described seeing a family member sitting alone in their parked car, just sitting there in the driveway, engine off, not going anywhere, just staring straight ahead for 20 or 30 minutes at a time. At the time, the neighbor thought maybe they were just on a phone call or listening to music. But looking back, they realized it was something much darker. It was someone trying to find a moment of escape, a brief pause from whatever was happening inside that house. These were warning signs, but nobody understood what they really meant until it was too late. The night it happened started like any other evening. Lights were visible in the Derby home around dinner time. Neighbors saw nothing unusual, no sounds of arguing or conflict. Around 10:30 that night, the lights went off. The house went dark, and everything went silent. But inside those walls, something unthinkable was taking place. Hour by hour, the tragedy unfolded with no one outside knowing. No emergency calls were made. No one ran outside screaming for help. The horror happened in complete silence. By the time morning came, multiple members of the Derby family were gone, and the person responsible was someone they had shared meals with, someone they trusted with their lives. When authorities finally entered the home, what they found changed them. Experienced officers who had seen terrible things before said this scene was different. There was no forced entry anywhere on the property. Every door and window had been locked from the inside. Nothing was stolen from the home. The television was still there. Jewelry was untouched. Money was still in wallets. This told investigators everything they needed to know. This was not a robbery gone wrong. This was not a home invasion. This was something that came from within the family itself. The crime scene revealed a level of familiarity that only an insider would have. Someone who knew which bedroom belonged to whom. Someone who knew the family's nightly routine. Someone who knew exactly when everyone would be asleep. And that realization sent chills through the entire investigation team. Because stranger danger is something we teach children to fear. But the statistics tell a different story. The most dangerous person is often someone you already know. Detectives spent weeks reconstructing what led to this moment. They pulled phone records going back 6 months. They analyzed bank statements and credit card transactions. They read through text messages and emails. They interviewed over 40 people who knew the family, co-workers, friends, distant relatives, anyone who might have seen something. And piece by piece, a disturbing pattern emerged. The perpetrator had been displaying signs of severe emotional distress. Their behavior at work had become erratic. They were calling in sick more frequently. When they did show up, co-workers said they seemed distant and disconnected. One person remembered a lunch break conversation that now felt haunting. The perpetrator had talked about feeling trapped in their life, about how everything felt hopeless, about how they couldn't see a way forward anymore. At the time, the co-worker tried to be supportive. They said things like, "It'll get better," and everyone goes through rough patches. But now that co-worker lives with the weight of wondering if they could have done more, if they could have said something different. Forensic psychologists were brought in to analyze the case. They found patterns that appear in many family violence situations. First, there's a period of increasing stress that goes unaddressed. The person feels overwhelmed but doesn't reach out for help. They begin to isolate themselves from support systems. Friends and family are pushed away gradually. And finally, there's the breaking point. The moment when rational thinking collapses entirely. When someone makes a decision that will destroy everything. What makes these cases so devastating is they don't happen suddenly. There's no single trigger moment. Instead, it's like a dam slowly cracking over time. Small fractures appearing day after day, until finally, the whole structure gives way all at once. By the time the perpetrator acted, they were no longer thinking clearly. They weren't considering the permanence of what they were doing. They weren't thinking about the pain they would cause. They weren't thinking about the lives they would destroy. They were operating from a place of complete psychological breakdown. And that's what makes family violence so terrifying. It doesn't follow logic. It doesn't make sense to anyone on the outside. Because by the time it happens, the person committing it is no longer seeing reality the way the rest of us do. When news of the Derby family massacre reached the public, the reaction was immediate. Local news stations covered it for weeks. People in the community couldn't process what had happened. How does an entire family just disappear like this? How did no one see the warning signs? Why didn't someone step in? The case became a turning point for discussions about mental health. Local counseling centers reported a huge increase in people calling for help. People who had been suffering in silence suddenly realized they needed to speak up. Churches held community meetings about recognizing crisis situations. Schools started training teachers to spot signs of trouble in students and their families. The Derby family's tragedy became a catalyst for change, but that change came too late for them. Some people asked why the perpetrator didn't just ask for help. Why didn't they reach out before things got this bad? But mental health experts explain it's not that simple. When someone is drowning in depression or despair, asking for help feels impossible. They convince themselves that no one can help them, that their situation is uniquely hopeless, that they would be a burden to others, and so they stay silent. They keep pretending everything is fine. They put on a mask every morning and face the world, and behind that mask, they're falling apart. Today, the Derby home still stands on that quiet street, but it's empty now. No one has moved in since the tragedy. The for sale sign came down after no buyers came forward. Because who wants to live in a house where something so terrible happened? Neighbors walk past it every day. Some cross to the other side of the street. Children who used to play in that yard now avoid it entirely. The house has become a silent memorial to what was lost, and a reminder of what can happen when pain goes unnoticed. Investigators kept this case in their training files. They use it to teach new detectives about the warning signs of family crisis, about how important it is to look beyond the surface, to ask the hard questions, to check in on people even when they say they're fine. because fine is sometimes the biggest lie we tell. The Derby family massacre didn't have to happen. There were moments when intervention could have changed everything. If someone had noticed the warning signs and taken them seriously. If the perpetrator had felt safe enough to ask for help. If there had been better mental health resources available. If the family had felt comfortable sharing their struggles. But all of those ifs don't change what happened. They only show us what we need to do better going forward. This case taught investigators something crucial. Family violence doesn't announce itself. It grows in silence. It hides behind closed doors and forced smiles. It lives in the space between I'm fine and I'm falling apart. And the only way to stop it is to pay attention. To listen when people speak. And to listen even harder when they go quiet. Because sometimes the loudest cry for help is silence itself. Do you think tragedies like this can truly be prevented? Or are some warning signs too subtle to catch until after the damage is done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.